Tiffany, you want to come up?
Good afternoon. I'm June Hoydel with the law firm of Zimmerman Reed, and I'm here representing Duluth and Fridley Public School Districts as well as Education Minnesota. This morning, we filed a federal lawsuit challenging the federal government's decision to remove long-standing safeguards that limited immigration enforcement activity in and around our schools. For decades, federal policy recognized that schools are different, places designed for children, education, and for the stability that families depend on. This case was filed to restore clarity and legal boundaries around schools after those protections were removed without appropriate legal process. After that change, school leaders in Minnesota began seeing the effects quickly. Attendance declined, families' daily routines and the sense of safety that schools depend on were overshadowed by fear. As a result, schools had to adjust their schedules, cancel activities, and redirect time away from teaching and towards managing this uncertainty brought about by this change in policy. What our clients are seeking is a court order to restore clear limits around schools consistent with long-standing policy so that schools can function as intended. You'll now hear from school teachers and educators who are closer to this issue and its effects on schools. I'll hand it over to Monica Byron.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. I'm a teacher on leave from the Richfield Public Schools, serving as president of Education Minnesota. All the groups here today bring their own perspective to this lawsuit. I, of course, think like a teacher. The Code of Ethics for Minnesota educators states, quote, "A teacher shall make reasonable effort to protect the student from conditions harmful to health and safety," unquote. Although it pains me to say this, one of the greatest threats to the health and safety of Minnesota's school-age children right now are the ICE and Border Patrol agents in our state. The ICE presence at and near Minnesota schools is causing lockdowns, emptying schools, and traumatizing children every day. Over the past month, we've seen many examples of students, educators, and our communities being hurt by the conduct of immigration agents near or on our schools. Spraying chemical irritants at high school students during dismissal time, questioning students about their immigration status for no clear reason other than their skin color, and using a 5-year-old returning home from preschool as bait to try to arrest his parents. These actions are not only shocking, they're unlawful. They are not only disturbing, they are disrupting the safe spaces educators create for our students. Our students can't learn, our educators can't teach, and when there are masked, armed agents outside of classroom windows, sometimes for days and days, that leaves our students and educators traumatized. Thousands of students have missed weeks of school, and their absences leave a hole in our communities. The really young students that I taught, they come home from school and they don't understand the politics. And you know what? They don't care. They just miss their friends. They just want them back. Look, I represent a union of educators, teachers, bus drivers, custodians, paraprofessionals, social workers, and higher education faculty. And honestly, we're all exhausted. Every day, we're helping students and families who are living in fear. We worry constantly about immigration agents raiding our workspaces. And we feel the ache of knowing we can't honestly tell our students that they're safe. But we're still bringing this lawsuit because we feel a moral obligation to use our voices to protect the children whose educations are being disrupted. And we're doing it all for the educators who just want to return to teaching. Happy, curious, rambunctious, smiling, optimistic students are what we want to see in our spaces. I'm just going to tell you, we all are missing that. So now let's hear from John Magus, who is the superintendent of the Duluth Public Schools. John?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm John Magus, superintendent of Duluth Public Schools. And for decades, schools were considered safe locations, locations free of impacts like we've just heard about. This wasn't a complex legal theory. It was a simple and powerful promise that a child's classroom should be a place of learning, not of fear. It ensured that immigration enforcement could not happen on our school grounds, on our buses, or near our buildings. The removal of this long-standing protection has led to immediate and real consequences for our learning community. We've seen increased anxiety amongst our students. We've seen decreases in attendance and families questioning whether school remains a safe and predictable place for their children. Schools function best when families have trust in the educational institutions, and that cannot happen with the fear and instability that has been part of today's world. We see it every day. We have over 24 families who have experienced and expressed profound fears. We have some that have self-deported. Others are keeping their children home. We have dedicated staff members of color who now carry their passports with them at all times, just hoping to avoid wrong detention. We've also seen students who were once excelling in their classes now failing, their mental health shattered by the continued and constant weight of this anxiety. This is not an environment for learning that any of us accept, and we believe that this policy change is misguided and harmful. Now, some of you might ask, why is Duluth taking a lead in this? Why are we interested? Well, our district has not experienced the large-scale enforcement that we've seen here in other districts. It's important for us to stand up as good neighbors. That's what we've seen in Minnesota. Whether it's in the streets of Minneapolis or whether it's the neighbors to the north in Duluth, we want to stand up for our neighbors here in Minnesota and across the country. Many districts are facing huge and disproportionate pressure and putting pressure on freedom of speech, and this is something that needs to stop immediately as well. It's important that when many districts are unable to speak up because of this pressure, that other districts speak up on their behalf, the Minnesota neighbors that they deserve. We want to fight on their behalf and behalf of all students in the state of Minnesota. This lawsuit is more than just about our district or the districts that are signed on. It's about standing up for the fundamental principle that schools must remain safe and welcoming environments that are secure places for every child, regardless of their background or immigration status. And now I'd like to present Superintendent Brenda Lewis from Fridley.
Thank you so much. Brenda Lewis, Superintendent of Fridley Public Schools. I'm actually going to abandon my pre-prepared talking points. So this morning, I had a glimmer of hope with the 700 ICE agents being immediately withdrawn, right? That glimmer of hope lasted maybe 3 minutes, and all of a sudden, John got a call from me at about 9:15 this morning, and this is how 600 of our elementary students were welcome this morning. We have 2 elementaries. This is how one of the elementaries started. 6 ICE vehicles. Now remember, there's more than 1 ICE agent per vehicle. One of them had 4 agents, came up and back, up and back, up and back, right outside of our school. We had a mother that arrived with her child who is legally in the United States, who was terrified and was followed by 2 ICE vehicles for no apparent reason. Our principal, who is always out at arrival, got yelled at, screamed at, mocked, videoed, and photoed by 4 ICE agents in the same SUV. A board member of ours was followed from her residence with her 3-year-old child in the back of the car. Both are natural-born U.S. citizens, all the way to her child's daycare. Do you know why this is happening? Because I am telling the truth on behalf of our district. That is why this is happening. This is clear and present terror. Can you imagine walking into your elementary school? I was literally out front with our security team and our staff walking up to every family that came a few minutes after arrival saying, ICE is here, please stay in your car, we got you, please don't speed, please don't put on your turns, or please put on your turn signal, be very careful. Most of our families are families of color. They are targeted. Yesterday, when I was doing the patrols that I do every morning and every afternoon with our security team, we had ICE spotted near a setting for special ed self-contained program. I went down there and I was terrified, not because I saw ICE, but because I saw 3 international talent, our teachers, that are here legally in the United States. If we did not have them, we would not have special ed programming, especially for our students in our setting for our most vulnerable. I saw them walking, and I was terrified, and I immediately had our security team member pull over just randomly, and I got out of our patrol vehicle, as I call it. It's a Chrysler Pacifica. I know, I wish it had a little more muscle, but yeah. So I got out and I ran across the snow, and I said, and all of our international talent know me because I'm their sponsor, right? And we get to know each other even before they arrive, and they are such an amazing part of our community. And I said, ICE is here, ICE is here. Please go back to your school. And they're like, they call me DBL, Dr. Brenda Lewis. DBL, 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 we're just going to the store. And I'm not going to name the store. The store is like literally 2 blocks away. I said, absolutely not. Get back to the school. Where is your ride share? Get back. I would not allow them to walk to the store. This is our clear and present reality. This is not a joke. This is not exaggeration. And I honestly could care less right now about politics. We need this to stop. And we need this to stop immediately. And the theme that we have right now in our district is, thank God for Duluth. We got Duluth. So please believe us. Please honor. I invite any of you to come and help in my district. It is pure and present evil, and we are denying children the right to human dignity and basic safety. And our staff shows up every single day. And guess what? We had the call went out, and we had so many volunteers there sanctuarying our school today. And that's exactly what's happening now at all of our schools. Thank you for your time today. I'm sorry to introduce you.
Hello, my name is Kristen Sinicariello. That's hard to spell, so that's Sinicariello. I'm a high school social studies teacher, a girls soccer coach, and a proud member of the Columbia Heights Federation of Teachers. Since Operation Metro Surge began, there has been monumental destruction and disruption to our student learning and our broader school community. Today, although Liam Ramos has returned home, 4 students from our district remain in ICE custody and detention. Dozens of students have had parents taken into ICE custody, and hundreds of our district families have been directly impacted by the violence that ICE has brought to our streets. The most obvious impact that ICE presence in our community has been on student attendance. When Operation Metro Surge began, many students stayed home or had spotty attendance. When the second semester began at the high school last week, students were offered an online option. About 300 students opted to stay home and take classes online, which is about 1/4 of our entire student body. This is disproportionately affecting our Latino students. Their absence is felt in the hallways, in extracurricular activities, and in the classrooms. Many students shared with me that they know that they don't learn well online, and they would rather remain in school with their peers and their teachers. However, regardless of the citizenship status of these students and their families, many are afraid to leave the house and come to school in person. Last week, many of us held our breath when President Trump and Tom Homan promised de-escalation. However, in the last week alone, we have seen ongoing violence towards our students and our community. On my way to work last Wednesday, I saw 3 ICE vehicles at a park near our school. A student in my AP World History class then arrived late to school, only to let me know he had been pulled over by ICE on his way to school and was going to spend the class period in the office with the counselors. Today, this student had his head down all of class. Fear for himself and his family have made him unable to learn. On Saturday night, our girls' soccer team forfeited a game because too many of the girls were fearful to leave their houses. A mother who herself often volunteers to drive all the players who are sheltering home, whose parents are sheltering at home, was herself then followed and menaced by ICE while her 2 teenage daughters were in the car with her. Just this Monday morning, 7 ICE vehicles were loitering in our student and staff parking lots at 6 a.m. before school began. None of this should be legal. This tension, fear, and violence permeate our communities every single day. Our staff and community have come together to provide food, assistance, and safe rides for students, but sometimes it feels that we are no match for the agents, their guns, their shiny SUVs, and little to no regard for public safety or following the law. I myself am a proud daughter of an immigrant father from South America. I'm a living testament to the value immigrants bring to this great state. I see myself in the students of Columbia Heights. These families are a blessing to our communities, and they place huge value in their children's education. Their children deserve the opportunity to learn and grow up in a safe environment that values them. As long as these actions continue, the federal government and ICE will continue to undermine our children's ability to learn and our capacity to serve them. ICE operations near schools must end now. Thank you. And I'll now introduce my colleague, Peg Nelson.
Hello, my name is Peg Nelson, and I've been a teacher in the Columbia Heights School District for the last 33 years. I currently teach at Valley View Elementary, and I am a proud member of the Columbia Heights Federation of Teachers Local 710. Immigration enforcement activities had significant adverse effects on our schools. Many of our families are afraid to send their children to school. One day last month, we had nearly 200 students absent from our school of 570 students. On average, we now have 130 students absent because they're afraid to come to school. Our school population is 66% Hispanic. They are disproportionately impacted. Our district recently began offering an online option for students who did not feel safe coming to school in person, but we don't have enough resources to accommodate every request. I fear students will fall behind because they are unable to safely attend classes. We have community members patrolling around our schools at drop-off and dismissal times to keep watch for immigration agents. We had an incredible traumatic dismissal time in recent times, and we heard the patrollers blowing the whistles around dismissal, and one of our staff members went running outside. We have many students who walk to and from school, and that staff member grabbed the students and got them safely home or back into the building. One of my students told me the story, and he said that he almost didn't make it home. He almost got taken. Our staff person had saved him. There were tears in his eyes. And it's like, what do you say to that? A high school special education teacher told me the story of several high school students that have been pulled over and questioned by immigration agents. One student has a speech impairment. He reported that the agents mocked him and asked him where his mommy was because he knew the student drove his mother to and from work. He knew the student was vulnerable, and the message was that the agent would eventually detain the student's mother. The student arrived at school shaking, and crying from this terrifying and cruel encounter. Our district has had at least 7 students detained, 5 of which were elementary school students. At least 27 family members of students in our building alone have been detained. It is hard to keep track because we have some family members that are just disappearing. Our school is helping many families navigate the loss of household members, including sometimes custodial parents. We are providing rent and food support for many of our families. Immigration enforcement activities are adversely impacting all of our students, irrespective of immigration status. It is not normal for elementary-aged kids to see a large portion of their classmates gone. It is not normal for our hallways to have refrigerators, freezers, and stacks of boxes from floor to ceiling with food and supplies for our families that are afraid to leave their homes. While teachers are trying to maintain normalcy for our students, there is a level of fear that constantly permeates our buildings. Teachers and administrators who are delivering food to families that are afraid to leave their homes have been followed by immigration agents. Some of the agents waved and smirked at them as if to convey, "Now we know where they live." Their intent is clearly to instill fear in us all.
Thank you, everyone. We'll now take questions, if there are any.
For Superintendent Lewis, you made a comment about, thank God we have Duluth as like a sign of relief, but it suggested to me that maybe other districts are hesitant to put their name on this lawsuit. Can you speak to that, and is that a fair characterization, that some school districts are fearful to sign on?
I mean, wouldn't you be? Last week, I was followed in the morning on the way to work. I was followed in the evening on the way from my office to a elementary school that's a reasonable distance away to a bingo night. 3 board members had ICE vehicles sitting outside their homes all day. Last Thursday, a board member was followed by ICE for over an hour. Last Thursday, I literally called John and said, "Are you sure that you're up for this? Because this is what you're going to get." I do not blame any other district for whatever variety of reasons for not joining. I do not. This is what happens when you speak up at the same time. We need the helpers to come forward, and they can't come forward if they don't know what is happening. And Duluth doesn't have to sign on to this. No district does. Their experience, they could easily sit this one out. But John and his district have decided to put themselves right in the target. And that's why I say, I'm so glad we have Duluth. And we normalize that now. Because they don't have to do this. They don't have to do this. But they are standing up for what's right. So I completely understand why districts are not joining. It's scary. They retaliate against you. Very abruptly, abrasively, and it's all intentional to get me to stay quiet.
Have you talked privately to other district leaders about this, and they've expressed that to you, that we just can't do this because we're too afraid, or have you had those direct conversations?
We meet as superintendent groups, and then we just talk about what all of our current present reality is.
I think one other thing that I've heard too is directly from superintendents that they're afraid of retaliation. They're afraid of retribution, because that's the playbook these days. They're afraid that federal funding will be taken away, or that there will be false allegations or investigations that are meant just to stop this type of thing. Even talking with the leaders in Duluth, there was legitimate concern that they were concerned that by doing this, we're going to bring attention to Duluth and have Duluth targeted. And so when your community leaders are concerned about that, it's important for us to weigh that piece. But again, federal funding, investigation, all of those things, I think that those are concerns that we've heard. And I know that others are still considering joining and considering that, and I think that we need to look at that as well. I think that there also needs to be a national movement for this. One of the other thing that I think is misrepresented a little bit in the press right now is that we as districts are paying for this. There isn't any taxpayer money or any school district money that is being used for this, and I think that's important to note, that we're being funded through Education Minnesota, and I think it's important that we all stand up and speak up for our neighbors.
Minnesota families, children, and educators are already dealing with the impacts from COVID. I feel like people haven't gotten over that yet. Can you talk about the long-term impacts of this and what it will have in years to come?
Sure. So I think, as we've heard, districts that are having hundreds and hundreds of students missing and districts that are seeing this type of tragedy unfolding day in and day out are really, really being impacted. And I think about Keith Ellison yesterday was talking about the impacts, and he remembers when he was 5 years old seeing the military trucks rolling through his town of Detroit when there was civil unrest there. And so I think those are the things people remember. And interestingly, when we had our meeting of Metro superintendents, there were probably 40 people on the call, and what we hear from so many people is this feels like another pandemic. It feels just as impactful, there's just as much planning, there's just as much work behind it, there's just as much caring and flexibility on the part of our educators, yet at the same time, this isn't something that came from nature, this is man-made, this is a choice. And if we make other choices and bring protected status back to schools, at least that will take the heat down and provide opportunity for our students.
I reached out to DHS for comment about this lawsuit and the policy and their decision to rescind the policy that you guys would like to see restored. And they said that, quote, ICE is not going to schools to arrest children, we are protecting children. They go on to say that criminals can no longer hide in schools, they can use, there may be a situation where arrest may be made to protect public safety if a dangerous felon were to flee into a school. Basically saying this allows them to use common sense to enforce immigration law, is my paraphrasing of what this is saying. Has there been any instance in which those people they described, a child sex offender, an illegal immigrant who is a felon, who has been arrested on school property? Does anybody know of an instance of that happening?
I do not, but the interesting thing is they had that power for those types of situations with that legal guidance. And I think it's a purposeful taking away of policy to create chaos, to create disorder, to create fear. It's not about having that guidance in place, it's about creating fear. And that's the unfortunate piece. Everybody here who's working, there's so much extra stress. You could have that in place. And I think protected status for schools, that's what this is about. But also when we think about protected status for hospitals, where people are seeking medical care or avoiding it now, or places of worship, or when you think about students and people who might be sex trafficked and are afraid to go to the authorities now because they're afraid of being immigration enforcement. I've talked to law enforcement officers who really are so frustrated with this as well because they've worked for years to put in supports for building the relationships, and they've all been eroded now. And so there's a lot of frustration by a lot of people. We're all about law enforcement. We're all about legal enforcement of important things, but we can do that with this in place.
And I'd just like to make one quick correction. Education Minnesota is not paying for this lawsuit. We have been fortunate to have 2 law firms that are doing this work pro bono. So I just wanted to make that.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Can you talk about next steps? I mean, are you hoping that other districts will sign on here? You talked a lot about the reality you're living through right now. What do you hope next steps mean to this is happening?
I just want ICE out of our schools, all of our schools. I'm also worried that this is a national pattern. I have some sort of webinar or something coming up where I'm talking to leaders from across the nation that are terrified and they want to meet with me to learn how to prepare for ICE. That's ridiculous. I would rather talk to them about literacy strategies or things like that. So what we want, and anyone can correct me here, as a collective, please, just let us have our safe learning environments back. That is what we are asking for.
And with the lawsuit itself, are you hoping that more districts will sign on? What's the plan?
I mean,
We-
go ahead, John.
We hope for that as well. And related to that other question, I think when we're considering immigration reform, we've heard a lot of things about body cameras, we've heard a lot of things about removal of masks, but I haven't heard on the national conversation piece about returning protected status to schools, so that would be something else that we'd like. And then the second part of your question?
Just, yeah, next steps for the lawsuit.
Yeah,
You answered it.
great.
Is just a quick question for the attorney who spoke initially, just to understand, to make sure I'm understanding the legal argument you're making, is that by DHS rescinding this policy without a proper comment period, it didn't go through the legal process to take away that policy without public comment and a rulemaking period, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. If you look at the complaint, the 2 counts that are in there are under it's a statute called the Administrative Procedures Act. And anytime you make a significant change in policy like that, there are certain procedures that you have to follow. And so what we're arguing is that DHS did not follow those procedures.
John, I want to go back to what you were saying about conversations about immigration reform focusing on body cameras and masks. Are you talking about congressional negotiations for DHS funding? Is that something you're hoping
Yes,
congressional leaders will?
thinking about congressional funding. If we're going to continue to fund an army of oppression, I think that we at least need this in place so that we can keep our schools safe.
Have you been in touch with anybody in Congress about that?
Yes.
I want to, and because of time, I want to thank everyone for coming. And if there are any further questions, they can be answered outside in the hallway. So thank you again.
Thank you all.